this whole plane jolt forward, and soon it was a lot of smoke. It was a traumatic experience, but no different than a lot of kids went through in World War II. And that's the point I want to make, because people, talk about, well, you're a hero. Well, there's nothing heroic about doing your duty, trying to serve with honor, and there's nothing heroic about getting shot down. I've always wondered at how they honor you if you've been shot down, but if you do what you were supposed to do, land your plane safely back on the ship, you're just another pilot.
That was former President George H.W. Bush recounting his harrowing World War II experience when the plane he was piloting was shot down over Japan. Bush later returned to Chichijima after his presidency, which our next guest describes at length in her new book. Joining us now, former Chief of Staff to George H.W. Bush, Jean Becker. She is the author of the book, The Man I Knew, the amazing story of George H.W. Bush's post-presidency. Also with us, historian Jon Meacham, who is also a biographer of the late president. It's good to have you both on this Memorial Day.
Jean, thank you so much for being with us. I can't look at your title, The Man I Knew, and not think of a 1988 op-ed I remember called The George Bush I Knew, after, I think it was Newsweek, that had some ridiculous cover talking about the wimp factor and other people trying to tear this man down. Somebody that had known Bush a long time talked about riding with him in a plane where the door flew open and everybody panicked. He quietly reached over, closed the door, talked about walking out of a big contributor in West Texas that was going to give him a ton of money but wouldn't do it because he thought he was too racially insensitive and wouldn't take his money. Time and time again, you hear that character is what you do when nobody's looking. Time and time again, that's the man you knew, whose character shone, especially during those times. Mm.
Joe, Mika, thank you so much for having me on. You sort of just captured the heart and soul of George Herbert Walker Bush. And one of the reasons I wrote the book is two reasons. One, he left me so many amazing stories that really have to be told. He was funny and we had so much fun for 25 years. But the other reason, the more substantive reason, is that he really left us a blueprint on how we should all be living our lives. He knew how to live life with joy, with principle, with substance. The book is full of great stories about how until the day he died, he never quit loving his country and quit giving back. So thank you for letting me talk about my favorite person I'll ever meet.
Jon Meacham's with us, and he has a question for you. John.
Well, President Bush referred to Jean simply as the Great Becker. And so, the Great Becker. Jean, I just have to ask you, because one of our many unresolved issues as friends is that you kept the Bandar story from me. So tell us about Bandar.
Well, before, I want this segment to be full of life and joy and happiness. But I do want Mika and Joe and all of your listeners to know that on page 195 of this book, in a chapter called The Worst of Times, I literally wrote, the hardest decision I had to make had to do with Jon Meacham. And you're going to have to read the book. Everyone's going to have to read the book to understand what that means. But this was all about my handing Jon Meacham President Bush's diaries, which no one had ever read. And some people thought I was crazy, but you're going to have to read the book. Prince Bandar. Yes, John, there are stories in this book that I held out on you. And I'm so sorry, but not really. I'm not sorry at all. But you want me to tell the whole Prince Bandar story? Do we have time?
Yeah,
do it.
And at some point in around 2004, 2005, Margaret Tutwiler, who worked for Secretary Baker at the State Department, called me one night and said, Jean, We're hearing rumors everywhere that Bandar has been assassinated by the Syrians. Prince Bandar was the U.S. ambassador, was the ambassador to the United States from Saudi Arabia for something like 30 years, all through President Bush's presidency. They were very close. And Margaret said, "We think Bandar has been assassinated. Have you all heard anything?" And I had not. And Margaret said, "Well, can you check your sources?" Well, I called the CIA. The CIA always had someone dedicated to President Bush to ask his many questions. They loved him. And so I called and they said, "We've heard the rumors. We're very nervous they're true. He's not been seen for months. We have boots on the ground. We're checking. We'll let you know." So the next morning, Margaret called me and said, "The French press is going to report this in about a half hour. If you haven't told him, you have to tell him, because it's going to be on CNN in about an hour. So you need to tell him." So I really didn't want to. He was going to take it really hard. But I told him, I said, "Sir, we think Prince Bandar has been assassinated." And he said, "Well, did you try calling him?" Well, the answer to that would be no. It had not occurred to me to call him. I would not call Prince Bandar. So President Bush said, "Get him on the phone." So I hollered to his young aide, Jim Appleby, and I said, "Jimmy, could you call Prince Bandar's cell phone number?" And he said, "Have you told him what's going on?" I said, "I've told him. Dial his number." And about 5 seconds later, Jimmy hollers into the other room, "Prince Bandar on line 1. So President Bush picks up the phone.
God.
And this is the conversation. "Bandar, yeah, George Bush. Hey, man, dead or alive?" "Uh-huh, uh-huh." And then he covers the phone and looks at me and says, "He's alive." I said, "Yeah, I got that." And so Bandar assures him, "I'm okay. The Syrians don't like me. They are after me. I'm in hiding. Everything's going to be fine. Don't worry." So he gets off the phone. He says, "Now, Jean, this is a good life lesson for you. This is something to remember. If there's confusion about whether someone's dead or alive, call them on the phone. And if they answer the phone, they're alive." So there you go.
That is
I learned
hysterical.
something from the man every single day of my life. What can I say?
Lifetime of service. The greatest statesman of our time, and there you have it. So this is Memorial Day, and you had the remarkable experience of going to Chichi-Jima, where on September 2nd, 1944, of course, Lieutenant Junior Grade George H.W. Bush was shot down, lost 2 crewmates whose lives we honor, Dell Delaney and Ted White today. He would want us to mention them by name. Talk about what it's like, what that was like to be. It's a little bit like being with Eisenhower at Normandy. What was it like to be out there?
It was amazing, and it was such an honor to go with him. He came into the office on January 2nd, 2002, and sat down in my office and said, "Jean, I've been thinking over Christmas. I have to go back to Chichi-Jima. It's something I've been thinking about." And he would not like this term. He would think this is a cliche, but I think he needed closure. Those 2 men had weighed heavily on his mind ever since September 2nd, 1944. So it was logistically complicated to get there. And ironically, who got us there was the Japanese government and the Japanese Navy. So the country that shot him down while he was bombing them was key to getting him back to that island. But it was an important journey for him to make, John. And he, at one point, we're all on this boat going out to where he was shot down and where he was rescued. And he wanted to get rid of all of us. He wanted to get rid of, we had cameras, we had a documentary crew with us, me, the Secret Service, everybody. And he asked to get in a lifeboat by himself. He says, "I need to be alone." So he gets in a lifeboat and paddles out away from the bigger boat that we were all on and just sat there for a while. And he needed closure on that. And the interesting thing, and you're going to have to read the book, to get the whole story. He met a man, a Japanese man, who saw him being shot down and saw him rescued. And it's just a great, great story. Wonderful story. He also met another pilot who was shot down over Chichijima and survived. Most of the pilots did not survive, and the commander of that island, the Japanese commander, would cut their hearts out and eat them, would eat the hearts of the pilots. And President Bush used to torture Mrs. Bush by saying, "I almost was an hors d'oeuvre."
Right.
She did not think that was funny.
It is.
That is too much.